Pop that and do that with the thing. All right. Hopefully the Twitch stream is running. I think we're right now. Hopefully the Twitch stream is running. There we go. Oh crikey! What a day! I've spent all day talking to people and now talking to you guys. Anyway, fantastic. All right, I'm going to open up Elite Dangerous. Oh. Anyway, fantastic. All right, I'm going to open up Elite Dangerous. And while I get the game started, I might pop in a video for you guys to listen to. While I get the game started, I might pop in a video for you guys to listen to.
We just had this sick feeling in my stomach. I thought, this isn't good. No one could even imagine what was coming down on us.
It sounded like a squadron of F-111s. It was pretty intense.
It was massive, and the country that we worked in was very rough, very steep.
Just had no control. It went in all directions, and we knew we were in for a fair old fight.
Probably the worst fire season in living memory.
We're in action, and they knew from that moment this was an unusual fire. There was no stopping it. It was so hard, the phones were just ringing and ringing. People were frightened and they wanted to know what was going on.
It was pretty hairy there for the first 5 or 6 hours because we had fire coming about 1.5 kilometre front on both ends, and yeah, we were stretched to try and contain it.
Trying to convey that to people, how dangerous it was for everybody. They were scared, and when they were trying to evacuate, that they could hear thunder coming out of the smoke clouds, and then they couldn't breathe. There was no oxygen in the air.
The temperatures was incredible. The winds were hot and intense. The fire come tearing through, jumped the road, and the flames all the way to the top.
I was at a fire at Lowmead. We had a big fire there which had been going for 3 days. Once this started, I was called over here the next day and was set on the top end of the fire, and it sounded like all hell had broken loose, and I thought, hello, yeah, we're going to be in for a definitely long few days.
This fire started for me on the 22nd of November 2018 when I actually had my other hat on as the postie, and I saw the smoke in the distance and immediately started activating crews to investigate the fire. Came down from the northeast through our deep water area, then into the national park, and from the deep water area it started moving in all directions up to Agnes Water, down through the rest of the Baffle Creek community.
It's that Wallam sort of country with paper bark, ribbon bark and melaleuca. It goes off like a bomb. When it goes off, it explodes. Once it starts getting on fire and you can't control it, it goes straight up to the top of the tree and bark falls off and it's spotting across the break.
I knew it was bad. I knew the conditions coming up were going to be bad. For us, the fire was fast moving. There were ember attacks 5 kilometres in front of Firefront.
The flames way above the trees. The smoke was it was that thick you couldn't see. I remember one stage on Deepwater Road, we had to go in a couple of 100 metres with backpacks to fight fires.
Our fire shed came under impact twice. The second time was very worrisome. We all had backpacks on and we were trying the best to keep the flames off the shed.
It affected quite a large amount of properties. 10 metres from the house, and we were between the house and the fire.
Definitely frightening. You can't say it wasn't frightening. Our main concern was our brigade member in here not being able to get out.
It's in the back of your mind. If anything does go pear-shaped, how do we get out of here? Because, you only get one chance.
You might have gone out with a nice yellow uniform. You were coming back absolutely black. eyes hanging out of your head, burns on arms, and everyone was just exhausted.
Some of the trucks had melted plastic on the side, melted mirrors because of the heat. That heat is pretty intense.
But I remember looking down Deepwater Road and all I could see was scores of fire trucks with lights going, sirens blaring, coming down like the cavalry down Deepwater Road. I have never seen anything like it, and we were never more happy to see people, fireys, turn up to help us. That was just great. I never saw so much resources and manpower put into anything. It was a machine.
And to hear the helicopter come over and his siren to let us know to get out of there because he was going to drop water on it, it was just such a relief. It was just, yeah, it was brilliant. They were just non-stop. The planes, the helicopters, it made a huge difference to our firefighting.
You could hear the fear on the radios, and then to see them come back in, and yeah, we did it. We stopped that fire. We saved this house.
All the other members live around here and all their properties were affected.
I just had this sick feeling in my stomach. I thought, this isn't good. No one could even imagine what was coming down on us.
It sounded like a squadron of F-111s. It was pretty intense.
It was massive, and the country that we worked in was very rough, very steep.
Just had no control. It went in all directions, and we knew we were in for a fair old fight.
Probably the worst fire season in living memory.
We're in action, and they knew from that moment this was an unusual fire. There was no stopping it.
We have audio. I think we have audio. I think we're good.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, exactly. We have audio. I think we have audio. I think we're good.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, exactly. All right, I just had a quick look at the Twitch stream. I think the audio's good. The video's good. Yep, we seem to be up. Fantastic. Well, not too sure whether anyone caught that prior to the little crash I had here. But we have Dave, and he is the. Well, I'll let Dave introduce himself to the stream, and we'll go from there.
Yes, hello again. So I'm not quite sure at what point my through my waffle that everything cut out, but I work for the RFBAQ, Rural Fire Brigades Association Queensland, that everyone's so generously donating to, and obviously thank you so much for that. I realise everyone comes from basically all over the world, so it's amazing for everyone to chip in, contribute to that, and support those who are able to support one of your members. So gaming communities at times can be fantastic. I'm involved in a few different ones, and some of them you kind of don't want to be, and some of them are fantastic, and this is obviously one of those. So thank you very much, guys. I'm the contact centre coordinator for the Rural Fire Brigade, so I work in the office there. I'm currently not an active firefighter, something I've done in the past and something that I hope to get back to again once the family's not quite so young. At the RFBAQ, we support all the volunteers in Queensland a number of ways. There's about 36,000 or so of them, give and take. It's a bit hard to keep track of that many different people, all different ages, all different walks of life. You've got people who are 18, 19-year-old and studying, people in their 30s and 40s working full-time, predominantly 50s and early 60s who are retired or semi-retired. Lots of farmers. The brigade compositions are very different. Some brigades have lots and lots of supporters, lots of volunteers, number of vehicles. Some brigades are just a couple of landholders that have joined together to look after their land. But of course, as some would know, in Queensland, you might have 2 or 3 properties. that are the size of some countries in Europe. So they've got big areas to cover. We support them, be it through grants for equipment that they need. So a lot of them can be chasing things like chainsaws, backpack blowers that they use during fires, what we term slip-on units. So it's basically a special built frame with a tank, a water tank and a pump on it that they can have on what they call a speed loader. So on another frame, they can back their farm ute under it, drop the firefighting gear on there, and off they go. We also support them by way of campaigning with government, so we're able to go and sit down with the actual state government and say, okay, look, here's the things that these guys need that they're not able to campaign for themselves. So something that we recently got up for a lot of the brigades is cancer coverage. So
that's
firefighters.
something I could probably I can relate to you here. We had similar legislation in Victoria.
Yep. So I know there's other states now that are arguing for this coverage as well. So firefighters are more exposed to, I think it's 11 or 12 different types of cancer just through their work. So what we've managed to get through with the Queensland state government workplace health and safety is that if a firefighter, whether they're a full-time firefighter, an auxiliary, so they're a part-time firefighter, or a volunteer rural firefighter, if they can track one of these cancers, it is presumed it is from their firefighting work, and they can then access
We'll call it
that,
compensation.
So financial and the like. Yeah, that's right. So obviously it's the sort of thing that you never want to have to do, but it's there. It's easy enough for a full-time firefighter to go into this sort of thing. So because they track all the different jobs that they go to, whereas a lot of rural firefighters, it's not tracked. You know, some of the job tasks can be there, but exactly who attended what is a bit tricky to track. But all the volunteers are registered. So if they do unfortunately contract a particular cancer, then they can say, look, this is most likely because of the work that you've done. So look, you can get called out to a fire that started in a farmer's shed, and it's travelled from there. Now you don't know what was in that shed. You know, people have habits of holding on to chemicals that they bought in the 40s that were particularly fantastic.
Oh, there was some pretty nasty stuff back then.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, they've held on to that, even though they probably shouldn't, and all that's gone up in smoke, and everyone's getting a good lung full of that, unfortunately. So but that's the sort of thing that we do anyway. So it covers, look, all sorts of different things. If a firefighter does fall in the line of duty, we can help with sort of immediate funeral expenses. We do what's called hardship grants, and we've done a few of those recently. Stories where you'll have a firefighter attending a bushfire, saving other people's houses, only to get a phone call to say that, oh, look, sorry, but you've just lost 3/4 of your property and one of your sheds is burnt down and all your fences are gone and your cows are everywhere. So
it's a bad thing to think that you're out there trying to save someone else's property and yours cops it. It's sad to hear, but unfortunately it does happen.
It does, and we can get hold of the local CRT or local rural store or whatever it might be and say, here's our credit card number. I want you to gather up 200-300 steel pickets and 500-600 kilometres of wire, and Joe Blow's coming down to pick all that up this afternoon to rebuild his fence. So we can quickly jump in and throw some money at that sort of thing, which can be a bit of help in those times. But yeah, it does happen. Fire's the sort of thing where the animals run away from it. They're not dumb, but some people run towards it. So try and help them as much as we can.
There's a lad in the Twitch chat here, Angry Monk, saying that's why people using pallets in bonfires and stuff. It always seemed like a bad idea. Yes, there is lovely things called formaldehyde in pellets. When that stuff burns, it's pretty nasty.
Yes, that's right. That's right. There's all sorts of, and of course, if it's been treated, it's got creosote and that sort of thing in it, and getting a good lungful of creosote smoke's not really the best idea. So, yeah, I've seen people using sort of timber offcuts and the like in fireplaces and for that sort of thing, and to cook over is not really a very good idea.
Exactly right. So we've got Dave here for a little while longer yet. You know, he has a family to attend to. But that being said, we'll if you have any questions in the Twitch chat, I am currently monitoring that, and feel free to ask a question if you want some a little bit more detailed knowledge from not from what we've been reading online. I have a little bit of knowledge of, and so does Boo the Hamster as well. Down here in Victoria, we've had some pretty nasty ones over the years. So we'll start off, Dave. In terms of a firefighting response, now obviously we've you know, people see smoke out there on someone's paddock, and mainly probably it's a neighbour and stuff. And they call 000, which is our emergency number here in Australia. What's the process of it going from the call centre into the operational centre of the RFS?
Yep. So the fire, when you call 000 and report a fire, we've got a very excellent system that goes to. It's called FireCom. Whether you ask for an ambulance, police, or fire, it goes off into a different unit as to how they handle it, communications unit, and the fire section is fantastic, called FireCom. There's a few different centres across the state, obviously a very large state, as you can imagine. And each one staffed by a number of people, all run 24 hours, and those people are able to interpret all sorts of gobbledygook very quickly and then relay that back out quite quickly. So you would report a fire, they'll ask you where it is, they'll enter that into SCAD, Emergency Services Computer Aided Database, and they'll then contact the nearest rural brigade. I'm assuming it's in a rural area, of course. That phone call will usually come through as a mobile call to the brigade's first officer. So all the brigades will have what's called a first officer. So that's effectively the captain, if you will. They're the lead of the brigade. And then that first officer then will quickly round up his troops, which once again will probably be a lot of phone calls. It might be a case of the partner quickly jumps on the phone and tries to ring as many people as possible. And then they all go hurtling off to the fire shed, if they've got one. Some brigades have got a shed that'll have their truck in it. Some brigades, it might simply be just the farm ute, and then they've got a trailer with a firefighting unit on it. But let's say it's a brigade that's got a shed and they've got a vehicle. They'll all race off down to the shed. Once they get there, they'll jump onto their UHF radio and contact FireCom again. And then they'll say how many members they've got, what vehicle they're in, and that they're then heading off to the fire.
Fantastic. Now, a question from Icarus Smith on Twitch. Your question asks, how has fighting fires changed in the last few years? From a public point of view, things seem more intense, and we definitely have seen major wildfires for a long time in Australia. Let's probably start with you there, Dave. Over the course of, let's say, the past 30 years, have fires become more intense in Queensland?
Not really. It really does go in a cyclic sort of thing, and the problem is that you get these really horrendous fires. They might be a 1 in 100 year type scenario, 1 in 50 year. So a lot of people will say things like rainforest is never burnt, but really what they mean is it's never burnt in their own living memory. So we've had really horrendous fires before, but what we haven't had is thousands of people who have gone for a tree change and have you see a lot of these new estates that have been punched into what used to be say a Melaleuca, swamp forest along the coast,
Oh,
and all of a sudden you've got all these people.
I hate Melaleuca swamp forest. It's horrendous.
So that's the problem that we've got on the Sunshine Coast. And you see all those fires around Pridgeon area. That's the sort of area that you got there. So you've got fires that travel incredibly quickly through there, quite explosive fires that roar through there. And so you're seeing a lot of that as well. It does tend to get worse on the back of cyclone seasons that do tend to come in clusters as well. So you'll get really bad cyclones, and that flattens a lot of things, and then you've got a lot of fuel left on the ground, and then you'll get a drought, then you get a particularly bad fire season, and you tend to get a couple of them in a row. So we had awful fire season last year with some really horrendous fires, and then again this year, and there's the potential for that to occur again next year as well. So we're certainly, we've only just gone.
What I might do, and I don't know whether you're watching the Twitch stream in the background there, Dave, I've found a photo of the fire seasons in Australia. It's an Australian map, but it sort of dictates the fire seasons in Australia, and we look at Queensland. I'll just transition over to this image. And now you can see that in the northern part of Australia, we very tropical area. Obviously, as Dave would know, we have a wet season and a dry season. And it's the wet season is our summer and the dry season is our winter. But Dave, are you able to see the photo there on Twitch stream?
I am, mate. I'm just making it a little bit clearer. There we go. Yeah, look at that with all the beautiful colours.
So you can see in certain areas where let's say the very yellow at the very top of Australia. Well, that's very tropical area. A lot of I'll let Dave go through the. You can go through and explain what that particular graphic means to us.
So yeah, it really is when the fire seasons are kicking in the different areas, depending on a lot of it's got to do with the vegetation that's present there as well. Look, they can change. So where we are, it's in an area. Spring is saying when our fire season is. So we will quite often say that our fire season begins in August, so just towards the end of winter there. But if we've had a very wet season in the summer leading up to that, and we've had a lot of growth, and then we've had a particularly bad winter where we've had a lot of frost, we're going to see fire season starting in June, which is basically the beginning of our winter. So the fire seasons tend to kick in a bit later on the further you head south, just due to the climate as it gets cooler as we head down, and also the type of vegetation that we're seeing through there. And of course that then impacts then on the type of fires we see as well. So getting further down south, you get a lot of tall timber, so very tall, dense eucalypt forests, and you get your crown fires, where the fire sort of races through the tops of the trees, which is quite a terrifying thing to experience. But then heading further back up into Queensland, we don't quite have that sort of vegetation, but what we will have is fire fronts that might be 50, 100 kilometre long fire front going through scrubland. And you'll also get sort of open grassed areas where you'll actually get, I don't know if anyone's seen the videos before of the fire tornadoes. And that's the one where the fires will generate their own weather, and they'll actually be able to generate small tornadoes. So
you've actually reminded me of the Canberra fires in 2003. And for those watching the Twitch stream, Canberra is our capital city in between Sydney and Melbourne. It was reported and actually documented that the fires that impacted Canberra made its own weather event and made its own massive fire tornado. This huge line of just flattened houses and burnt everything in this one particular line. And everything outside of that line was fine, but inside this line was just this fire tornado. It was huge.
Yeah, so that they can. There's been a few documented cases of fires generating their own weather and generating their own lightning. So the smoke getting up and generating clouds, and then just generating dry lightning, which of course then winds up starting spot fires elsewhere. So it really is the sort of thing where all you can really do is just stand back and do your best to protect what you can.
That's it. Now we're looking at Twitch stream here. Angry Mog says, so what you're saying is that fires that previously could have been ignored because they were just a standard thing, and now have to be dealt with because of the expansion of houses. And it's probably the conversation about the ever encroaching sort of urban to suburban to rural divide being further intertwined with towns growing, people from the cities moving out into rural regional areas, not knowing how important and how deadly fires can be. So we can probably throw some of your knowledge over that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there'll be areas, and there still are huge expanses in Queensland where a fire will start, and really the easiest thing to do is just to let it go. So you'll let it burn itself out, and it might burn out a huge area, but there's no housing, there's no agriculture, there's nothing like that. So it's not that big of a problem. But of course, now that there is just so much land that is, whether it's grazing, whether it's other forms of agriculture, or of course housing, there is just so much more of a need to jump on these sort of things. And of course, so many fires are, of course, started by people themselves, whether it's unfortunately, for those of us in Australia, at least, we would have heard that a lot of these fires on the Gold Coast and up into the Sunshine Coast were deliberately lit.
I remember hearing about that. I was so devastated to hear about. I think it was some teenagers about the one on the Gold Coast. They were just.
It was, yeah, up into the Sunshine Coast. I think we had a 12 and a 14-year-old girl or something were allegedly set fire to some of those. So it's very, very sad to hear, but that is what it contributes to some of these. So in the past, where you've had big expanses of land with no one there, firstly, there was less chance of it catching on fire because people weren't starting these fires. And of course, if they did start up, then it wasn't that big of a deal.
So, it's probably another question from my end. Here in Victoria, my state, it's the responsibility of the landholder as well, but also the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning and their forest firefighting workers to actually clear fire breaks and actually purposely have pre-burnt areas. Do you have a similar thing in Queensland?
Yeah, we do. So there is legislation that, in layman's terms, says it's your fuel, it's your fire. So that means that if you're a landholder, it's your responsibility to make sure that, firstly, things aren't basically catching on fire, and if a fire does start on your property, it's your responsibility to look after it. If you need help, that's when you call 000 and the rurals will come out and help. It's also your responsibility then to maintain fire breaks and put those in. There's other pieces of legislation then that say how big those fire breaks should be. And that's another thing that we're working on at the moment as well, is that because it is such just an all-encompassing figure. So what they say is it's 1.5 times the canopy height is what your fire break should be. So if you've got trees that are 10 metres high, you should have a fire break of 15 metres. Now that's all well and good if you've got tall eucalypt country, but if you've got areas that are melaleuca, so that's all your bottle brush and things like that.
You'll have to sort of dumb the melaleuca down into something that our international readers could understand. Let's go in terms of feet or meters, because we've got a lot of people from overseas watching.
Yes. So what we call the common name there would be a paper bark. So it's a very, very short tree, maybe only a few meters tall. Bark is like paper, basically. It sort of peels off, burns fantastically and quite explosively and quite quickly. So it's a very, very big fire hazard, but based on the legislation, your fire breaks would only be very, very small, sometimes to the point where there's not enough room for a fire truck to get between your fence and where this Melaleucas forest is, and then also to be able to turn around. So if you've got what we call a medium attack, so we've got a light attack, which is a ute or a utility, and I saw a question in there before. So basically a 4x4 flatbed, 4-wheel drive vehicle. So just a single cab with a tray on the back, and on that tray then will be a tank that'll hold a small quantity of water and a firefighting pump. And then we've got a medium attack, which is so it'd be a flatbed truck, then a larger unit, hold a lot more water. So you're looking at sort of a Mitsubishi Fuso, Isuzu type vehicle. One of those sort of things, you're looking at maybe 6 meters long, trying to turn one of those things around in a fire break that someone's gone through, and it might only be about 4 meters wide. It's a little bit tricky. So we're arguing that fire breaks should be dependent on the type of vegetation, not just a general rule there.
I'm gonna just,
there's our.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make that image a little bit bigger for people to see. So you can probably read from the top down the light appliances, and you can actually probably you can probably help them out by going through what sort of specific roles those fire vehicles have or do.
Yep, will do. I'll do that. I made that pretty picture there.
There we go.
So going through there, we've got our 36,000 volunteers, so give or take. Now, they're not all active firefighters. We also have support roles as well. So we've got people who might go in and just man the radios. I say just, I shouldn't use that word because all the roles are very, very important. 467 fire stations. Now that's for about 1,400 brigades. So you're looking there at about 1,000 rural fire brigades across Queensland that don't actually have a fire station. So they don't have a central area where they are able to keep their vehicle. Some of them just rely on parking it sort of beside someone's farm shed or in someone's farm shed. So 256 light appliances. So the vehicle there is I think that one's Nissan Patrol, one of the older ones. They're now using Ford Rangers as their light appliance. So it's a 4-wheel drive utility. And then on the back of that is a small water tank and also 1 or 2 firefighting reels on there. And they're the sort of ones that get sent out. More brigades tend to have some of those, and they can race out very quickly, go pretty well anywhere, and put out small spot fires. Underneath that, though, you can see the bulk of our units there, purpose-built medium appliances. So once again, Mitsubishi Fusos, Isuzus. I think there's some Ivecos in there, depending on how old they are and when they've been made. They'll be able to hold a lot more water, have 2 reels on the back, and also hold a lot more gear in there as well. So other things that they might need, fire rakes, things like that. They're all 4-wheel drive. Some of them are dual cab as well, so they can fit a few more firefighters in there. The heavy appliances or tankers, not an awful lot of these around. As you can see, only 32 spread across the state. They're in areas where there really are a lot of brigades, lots of fire. So really in the southeast corner of the state. So Gold Coast,
those
Brisbane,
heavy
Sunshine
appliances
Coast
would be more for larger towns where there's more of an urban scene where you might need to have a heavy appliance in the area for more equipment for urban areas.
That's right. So you've got that urban-rural interchange zone there where you've got a lot of the rural area coming down very close into heavily populated areas. So around the Gold Coast, you would have seen a lot of those vehicles out attending those, being able to carry a lot of water. There are other ones. So that's a heavy attack vehicle in the little picture there. There's also ones that are tankers, which is simply just water tanks that are able to come out with a huge volume of water, and then the smaller vehicles are able to extract the water out of that and use. Under that, support command vehicles, so they come in all sorts of different flavors. So that one there's just a 4x4 utility. That one looks like a command vehicle, so that would there's not an awful lot of those ones around. They're ones that might be used when there's a very large fire going on and they set up what they call an incident control, so it'll be full of communications gear. Some of them, the support command vehicles might actually just be a trailer, and the trailer's full of communications gear or possibly even cooking gear. We've built a few trailers that are effectively mobile kitchens. So if you think, you might have one of these fires that might run for a few days, you might have 30, 40 units at it, each that have got 2, 3, 4 volunteers in there. They might be working, 10-hour shifts. They're all going to be pretty hungry at some point. So good to be able to get some food out to them. Slip-on units. So there's the big bulk of things there, 3,500 of those, forever going up. As you can see there, it's a frame, it's got a water tank, it's got a pump, and it's got a hose reel on it. So this is the meat and potatoes of what the brigades use. So more than half of the brigades in Queensland are what we call primary producer brigades. So these are a group of farmers that have got together, formed a brigade. They'll have a couple of these units stored under a little lean-to round behind the farm shed. Fire starts up in the area. They jump in their work Land Cruiser or patrol, whatever they've got, race around the back of the shed. Usually these slip-on units will be on what's called a speed loader. So it's a frame that you can quickly back your ute under, drop that onto the back, clip it on, and off you go. All of a sudden, you're a firefighter, firefighting unit. So off you go. And then a similar thing there, the trailered unit. So similar idea, but on the back of the purpose-built trailer that they can hook up to and take it wherever they need to. And then finally, fireboat. I heard someone discussing this one in a stream last night. So the fireboat belongs to Wasp Creek. I'm just watching my 1-year-old crawl up on top of cabinetry. She'll take a jump off that. We'll see what happens. She might do a backflip. Fireboat belongs to a brigade called Wasp Creek Rural Fire Brigade. Fantastic name. And they're in the Bay Islands area near Brisbane. So just off Brisbane. So Brisbane's the capital of Queensland for all our international listeners. And there's a lot of islands. We've got Moreton Island, Stradbroke Island, Bribie Island, and their fireboat predominantly is just to get large volumes of volunteers from the mainland and between islands and things like that. So it's a very, very well utilised unit, that one. And, there could be more of those into the future. As brigades sort of start to develop specialised units, there's even sort of quad bikes and stuff that are getting used for different things now. So it's not quite Fireman Sam, don't quite have all the different spread of vehicles that he's got, but getting there.
Oh, well, Dave, you are a wealth of information. So what I might do is that we might another video here that we can put up. For those who are wondering what I'm doing in Elite Dangerous, I'm currently just doing my BGS sort of update. I'm forcing the update by running Elite Dangerous Market Connector, so I can then watch my influence charts and issue orders to my faction, which is the EBA Cunty League. I believe that we are the largest Australian faction in the game, but we're not going to brag. I have another video. I think it is more of the history of what our Rural Fire Brigades started out with. The story is not that dissimilar between states, and this one's specifically about Queensland. So hopefully, if the stream works, if this works, I should transition right now.
We got a few racos and a couple of knapsack sprays, and from then on we never looked back. we fought, we scrounged, we begged, we borrowed every bit of equipment that we could get.
Humble beginnings when they decided that they needed some sort of a structure around the fighting of fires outside of metropolitan areas, and thus the Rural Fire Board was created.
The rudiments of an organisation there as far back as the 1920s.
And then after the war, in 1948, things were getting pretty grim out there, fire-wise, so they started to build up the fire service again.
As far as I'm concerned, there's not a better asset to the man on the land than having control of fires, because they're an awful situation if they get out of hand.
I really respect those old blokes and the job they did out there. They had it hard.
The whole thing was, in those days, probably we had 3 inspectors for the state.
They had to go and look after huge areas of the country.
Ordinary old cars, no four-wheel drives, dirt roads, had to stay in pubs or out in the car, and long hours away from home, long days away from home.
Some of them used to go out, take a few sets of clothes with them and go out, and they just lived in the bush, going from one place to another to get their brigades formed.
Just talking to people, encouraging them to do something.
And it was all about then the creation of local brigades and providing them some legal protection for what they did and some insurance. And they were the 3 things that were the mainstay of the organisation for many years.
That's when it all really started to gear up and happen. And there was an enormous number of Rural Fire Brigades formed in those days.
We were a brigade, but it was relied on what farmers had, and they were virtually automatically fire brigade members anyway. That's how it worked back then.
People were picked as wardens because they lived here for a start, and they knew the country and they knew fire. Other times it was a case they were the only people who'd take the job over in the country areas.
Some of those years we were out every night or every second night. If it wasn't fighting a fire on your own country, it was fighting a fire on your neighbours, and sometimes quite a fair distance away.
That it's only common sense, and that's 99.9% of fighting a bushfire is common sense.
Yeah.
You use your brain and you won't get into trouble.
Oh, well, it was always to get on the right side of the fire, and you could get in close with a green branch and a wet bag or something like that. Yeah, simple as that. Yeah.
But we had to buy all our equipment in those days. We used to only have the old wet bag and the rake hose and trailer unit.
The days where you would turn up to a fire with 44-gallon drums, had 2 of them in the back of an old Holden ute. Like, you had pretty good gear if that's what you had.
The first truck we got was an old Ford. The floor underneath the brakes, there was a hole. So if the brakes never worked, you could always put your foot through and stop the truck.
Well, they'd all turn up with knapsacks, brake hose, tractors and fire tanks. Fight the fire the best way you could with whatever you had.
If you didn't have the things to do a job, you could work out whether you had something that in the shed that you could bring in to do it.
When I got up to Peachester, it was really just a bushfire brigade with a couple of tractors and drums and beaters and bags. I built a fire trailer. We built it out of a truck chassis. It gave us the same capacity of water as these trucks behind me have got, 1,800 litres, had dual hoses on it.
There was no mobiles, there was no radios in those days. The smoke, if the smoke went up, that meant people would come out. That was the fire call.
Like most of the farmers and all that, somebody'd make a phone call from one to the other, and then they'd all go out and show up and help.
These are the sort of people they were genuine working people. They were given a job to do and they did it.
And everyone just worked together and helped each other, and it was almost like another family. Everyone gets along so well together and looks after each other.
That was its strength, looking after the interests of a proliferation of 1,400 totally independent rural fire brigades throughout the state. You had to pull it in and make it and try and make it an operationally focused organisation without taking away the very thing that had made it strong and allowed it to survive for so long, was the strength of its people in the field.
All the lessons that we've learned and the experiences that we had in the past are our lessons for the future. And so we need to remember those things.
What we've got today was built on the efforts of those people.
We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the old timers. I guess there'd still be some legacy left. A reminder to the community that we're still here, and we've been here for 70 years. I presume we'll still be here for 70 more.
A bit of a greeny type thing, but land care was actually started by farmers, so it was, it's got that sort of crossover there. So
fantastic. Now, a question from Angry Mog again. No pumps or hoses on the boat. Does the fire boat have a water pump on it?
It does. It does have a hose on the front. So it's been a while since I've had a look at that one, but I'm pretty sure if you just getting some feedback there on there. Yeah, it's got one on the front there, so that they're able to use that to fight fires. But I haven't actually seen it in action.
Okay, so Angry Mog, I assume the question about the custom built fire engine. So most sort of large appliances are a custom built frame that bolts onto the chassis of a standard vehicle. There are some modifications to the vehicle in terms of flashover protection. So with the flames, if a truck does, unfortunately get caught and has to gets what we call flamed over, it does have backup water sprayers, and it's got internal sort of foil reflectors on the windscreen. You guys have that in your sort of larger appliances? there, Dave?
Yeah. So that they've got the curtains in there. All the appliances, rural appliances in Queensland, are manufactured by a company on the Sunshine Coast called Quick Corp. They are just modified standard vehicles, but I guess you'd say it's just as standard as what a rally car would be. So, you might go and get a Ford Focus rally car, compare that to a Ford Focus that you might go and buy from your local dealer. They're both Ford Focuses, but they're completely different vehicles now. So
I will
they
add
strip them.
that the front axle weight of a fire appliance is a lot heavier than what you'd find on a standard truck, but they are given a permit by the local roads authority to run a heavier axle weight on the front.
That's right, and they really cut it right to the gram with a lot of these things to be able to meet the GVM of things and make sure that people are able to still drive, say, a light appliance with a regular license and all that sort of thing. But yeah, they very, very, very heavily modified vehicles, and very much purpose built.
Fantastic. And Icarus Smith says he is a member of Landcare. Well done, son. You're doing a very good job. A question was aircraft. What does the fire services in Queensland use with aircraft?
So don't actually have any of their own, and really, considering the cost of the aircraft, just absolutely phenomenal for those 737s. So far more cost effective to hire those out. I think the one that was over here was an American one, and then they can look after all the maintenance of that, and we will hire that whenever we need it. But they know well ahead of time what sort of fire season we're going to have, and those will be on standby. And Air Ops and the SOC, the State Operation Commander, are all ready to go with all that sort of thing.
I can say down here in Victoria, we actually, a friend of mine who led the program with the Country Fire Authority, we have in Victoria here, led the program for night helicopter fire attacks. So they're using night vision goggles. I might pass his details on to you, Dave, after this. Wayne's a lovely guy. So basically, helicopters with night vision technology, basically going in at night, picking up water and obviously fighting the fires at night. You can really pick out hot spots, and if your place is under ember attack, you can get onto it fairly quickly with a helicopter in rough country. Can't see much else in terms of questions, so we'll go on to maybe a little bit of an operational thing with the association. So does the association get any funding from your Queensland state government, or is it all really just contributions?
That's all contributions. So no government assistance for what we do. We are very much our own standalone charity. There's a lot of charities in Australia will do fundraising through telemarketing and that sort of thing, but it's all farmed out to telemarketing firms, and then they all take their cut. We actually have our own very, very small call centre. It's got about 25 seats in it, all employing locals. So when people purchase raffle tickets in one of our art unions, a portion of that does go toward paying their wages, and it pays the power bill and that sort of thing. But it's a pretty small percentage. Everything else is done pretty well on the cheap, so that we're able to then farm the bulk then back out into grants and all that sort of thing.
So, in case you have forgotten, this stream is raising money for the Rural Fire Brigade Association in Queensland. They are a non-government funded organisation doing the best they can for the and supporting the entirely volunteer force that is the Rural Fire Service of Queensland. And Dave is, I've forgotten what you do, Dave. Well, introduce yourself again, and we can sort of keep moving on as the stream progresses.
Mate, even I don't know what I do some of the time. My official job title's Contact Centre Coordinator. So I've got a bit to do with the actual contact centre or call centre. So working out, where to dial, and then there's all the super interesting data analysis and fun with Excel and all that sort of stuff in the background. So for everybody else out there that is a big fan of Excel, high five to you. I love that program. But then, of course, there's also going into things of liaising with government. So we had a big meeting on Friday, sat down with some of the chiefs of the fire service in Queensland, and basically said, look, this is all the sort of stuff we need to do. I'm just going to move over as one of my cats tries to escape out a window, and she's wedged between the screen and the window. Get out of there, you stupid animal.
You want to drop your headphones and sort that out while we move on?
All right, here we go. She's coming out.
No, we're good. A
little Houdini.
A statement.
Hooray!
Oh, cats are hilarious.
Right, good to go.
Are we safe with the cat now, Dave?
Yep.
Fantastic.
She's inside.
A bit of a statement and a question from Boo. The space stamps are our stream before. You should have jumped on Discord chat, dude, and asked this question. One of the things that always amazes me is how different Australian state firefighting teams help each other out, and that is very true. We have very recently sent some of our SES and CFA volunteer crews and full-time crews up to New South Wales to help out with the Tenterfield fires. I do remember during the Black Saturday fires, which I'm going to be showing a little 3-minute video from there, we had crews from South Australia, New South Wales and Queensland as well, and Tasmania coming up to help out with the very devastating Black Saturday fires that took out 173 people lost their lives, and it took out thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hectares of land. Icarus says in our recent fires had guys from South Australia and West Australia. So, going back to that, so how often do you have to deploy firefighters to other states? That would be an operational question that Dave could probably answer, I hope. Dave, what is the cutting point for having for asking states for assistance? Is it a fatigue-related issue, or is it something that in terms of fire size?
Bit of both. So it's all something that's carefully monitored by the fire service. It really is when we get our very large events like we've had just recently, and like we had last year as well, where we've got these just running fires that go for weeks at a time. We'll have intra-state strike teams, as they're called. So that's where they put out the call to areas of Queensland that aren't immediately being impacted by fire, saying, who can you spare? Form a strike team, get them on a plane and get them down here, and then they can be distributed around, because, look, you'll get people who will be on the fire ground far longer than they really should be, and they need rest, they need to be relieved. So that's when these strike teams will come in, and then it will get to a point where they say, look, we can't strip any more volunteers from within the state. The whole state's getting into a severe fire danger area, and then they'll ask interstate. So they'll start asking the other states. The ones that we've had in this one, we did have vols come up from New South Wales and beyond that relieved, and very much so relieved, which was fantastic. Last year, the fires, for those that are local, the ones that we had up around 1770, Agnes Water, those areas, we had some come over from Western Australia, all the way over there, and they were very, very welcome crews.
Out of interest,
and the volunteers.
Dave, those crews from South Australia, they obviously didn't drive their vehicles over. They flew over and operated your services vehicles. Is that correct?
Yeah, so they'll tag along with. So we might have a Queensland volunteer in the driver's seat, and then we'll be able to pile in, 3 or 4 vols from, say, South Australia in there, and then head off to the staging area, and help out there. So, but they really love it. Whether it's the vols in the strike team or whether it's the local volunteers, because everyone does things differently, and they can share the knowledge how things are where they are. Obviously, the vegetation everywhere is different, so it gives them a real eye opener of how things work in other states. And look, you'll see the volunteers from the strike teams getting back on the plane, and they'll be wearing different hats and different jackets, and everyone's swapped all their gear around. And
yes, that's
they
right.
really love it. So
a CFA friend of mine has been deployed numerous times and to different states, and his last time before he had to leave the force was in South Australia, and he got on the news as part of a South Australian contingent going over there. So he was very proud of that. Now, not so much in terms of other questions. I could probably outline another operational one. Well, hopefully it's an operational one. When it comes to the logistics behind, let's say, a major fire, the one you had in the national park, logistics behind, let's say, your organisation in terms of supporting the volunteers. Now, I would imagine that you wouldn't have a lot of paid staff, but that being said, those staff are obviously doing a fantastic job. Does the association have programs to support in terms of like tenting for staging areas, or is that more of a government thing, or the food situation? Is that something that your organisation does, or is that hand in hand with the state government's responsibility?
That's it. Yeah, so very much a state government thing. Something that they're working on as well. So each time we have these big events, it's very much a learning process. Looking into the need to really, get more of these tent city type things happening, so that they can react quickly, and in quite a military type exercise, really, when you look at it, because you've got such a huge volume of people, and people that need accommodation, people that need to be fed. It's something that actually formed part of the meeting that we had on Friday, is the need for a lot of these strike teams to go out with what would effectively amount to, say, a team manager in a sports team. So separate to everyone else, and their role is just to make sure that everyone on their strike team has got somewhere to sleep, has got something to eat, and isn't on the fire ground too long. But when we have these huge events, we as an association pretty much just take a step back, let them do what they do best, and then we can come in and go, okay, who needs help with what, and then we can start to work out, what worked, what didn't work, all that sort of thing, and start to develop some policy from that.
Fantastic. So we were talking about this before, but the average age of a firefighter, we have the young ones coming through, and they'll get trained up. We did mention before in your 30s and 40s, you're working hard, you've got kids to deal with. So we see a lot of the older gentlemen coming through and consistently volunteering with the RFS. You're having a similar thing up your way, especially in the more rural and remote areas there, Dave?
Yeah, that's right. So in the remote areas, your spread of who is a volunteer is pretty much everyone on the land, because everyone has to be a part of it in some fashion. But coming into some of the more populous areas, the breakdown very much is you're looking at about 25% female, and then sort of 3/4 male, and the average age being in that early retiree, semi-retired, 50, 60-year-old bracket is where the bulk of them are. So people who, the kids are either old enough that they can be left to their own devices, or that they don't need that much sort of attention. They've moved out of home perhaps. Your work slowed down a bit. You're not stressing about taking a few days off work because there's an event. So that really is where the bulk of it is, and that sort of thing's never going to change. We just need to make sure though that it does remain an appealing option for younger people as well, so that there is still that small core of younger people coming up through the ranks that can maintain a lot of these brigades.
Fantastic. Well, I've got a little bit of a treat for you. I've managed to find on YouTube a video of the 2009 Black Saturday fires from a little outlying suburb called St Andrews. Now, this is through YouTube and OBS, so I'll just hopefully it's going to work. Where am I here? That's the page. I'll transition over to that, and we'll have a listen at this video. And very interesting what this guy, he had everything all set up. You know, he was very well protected from fire, but there was a whole other issue that he had to deal with. So let's. Sorry about that. I believe we have no sound. I will restart this. Give me 1 second and make sure that we have audio. Just there we go. That's the button I needed to press. My apologies, guys. Oh, dearie me, it's been a long day. I'll restart this video, and when we get back, we'll say a goodbye to Dave, because obviously he's got kids to deal with. Here's the video now, guys.
5 p.m. At the bottom of the mountain, directly below the Clarks, a fire has engulfed St Andrews. With the ground cleared around his house, Jim Baruta feels safe enough to arm himself with nothing more than a video camera.
How safe can you be? You know, I mean, you think if anyone's got a chance, it's someone like me. You know, I haven't got the trees up to the house and things like that, so I thought I'd be fine. But then when the fire came, it was nothing like I'd expected it to be. There it comes. You could hear the noise. It sounded like trains or jets coming towards you in the distance. It kept getting louder and louder. Another house on fire next door. It's like all the trees were exploding from heat. People say it's the leaves, you know, the heat of the oils in the leaves and the eucalypts. They just go off, and then it's like gas going off too. It's just burning like crazy.
The gases from the eucalyptus trees are escaping so quickly that they race upwards, mix with the air, and explode. The fire is feeding itself. The flames 4 times the height of the 20-metre trees.
Once it starts climbing up the hill, it just starts accelerating even faster and faster. It just builds up this momentum, and it's just eating everything in the way. It was just like you're in the middle of a hurricane. It was a hurricane, but it was on fire. It's all this debris going everywhere. Anything that was not bolted down or something was in the air flying around, and it was going to hit you.
A fire tornado has now developed, ripping through tens of acres in seconds. At well beyond 1,000 degrees, it makes an oven of earth and air. This firestorm can now kill from 200 metres.
Shit. I stood behind the brick pillar out there, and there's no way, if you put your hand out like that, it would have been burnt. It was like putting your hand in front of a furnace. And then I realised that there was a problem with the air that I was breathing. I wasn't breathing properly.
The fire is less than 300 metres away. Jim's in danger. Not of being burnt to death, but of suffocating. But he's got a backup plan.
And I thought, I've got to get out of here, and I've got to get to the bunker. I had to step out into the storm with my back to it, and it was all hitting me on the back. And I walked past the side of the house, into the bunker, and I shut the door. Whatever was going to happen was going to happen, and I couldn't stop it.
The fire sweeps over Jim, and he survives.
I think we're good. So there we go.
The bushfire season is far from over, even though you might think so after last week's deluge in Queensland. Fires are still burning in at least 3 states.
There we go. Sorry about that. My bad. Did you manage to catch the video, Dave? I think we're good now. I think we're good. All right. Now we got audio.
Yes, I did.
All right, awesome.
I did.
You managed to get that, Dave?
Yes.
Awesome. That was obviously from the Black Saturday fires. Back in 2009, early February, we had a massive string of 38, 40 plus degree weather come through and turned into what really was a massive firestorm that killed 173 people and hundreds of homes burned and thousands upon thousands of hectares destroyed. As Boo the hamster was talking to us before, and I think you're on par with us, Boo.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Fantastic. Boo was involved with it, I was involved with it, and we'll probably let Dave go and get his kids to bed.
Thanks, Dave. You've been brilliant. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, guys. It's absolutely amazing. I can't say too much more. Just thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave, for your insight into what is a fantastic volunteer organisation. Indeed, all volunteer organisations throughout Australia that are doing the job protecting communities, which is a really good thing, and especially supporting people who support us. Obviously, we are raising funds for the Rural Fire Brigade Association of Queensland, and so far we have raised $2,150, which is $150 over our donation, with a total of 49 donations in total. It's really fantastic to see. So thank you to Brianna Benson, Rumble Spooks, Blue Spruce, Kazika, Prex, and Ubuno Strom for your donations. It's really good to see people just chipping in to where it's needed. So, Dave, thank you so much for being on stream with us. You've answered some really interesting questions and given people an insight. So, thank you very much. We'll send you off to sort out your children, and obviously a stray cat.
I think my wife's done that, so I owe her a coffee.
Well, give your best to your wife, and everyone in the chat, Twitch chat, is saying thank you. As Icarus said before, we are definitely going to be looking at something next year for you to do something very similar. Icarus, you there, buddy?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I'll keep in touch, and as I've mentioned to Icarus before, I'm just going to have a squiz at Elite Dangerous now. I was saying to him that I remember playing the original back in the 90s, so it looks a little bit more special than what I did then. I tend to collect games that sit there in the library and don't do much, but I'll have to give it a try.
Yeah, we'll find out when we've got a sale, or even maybe one of our freebie copies of Elite Horizons might be coming your way. We'll see what happens. Dave. So what we'll do is I'll throw you in the channel, and I'll continue with the stream. Thank you so much, Dave, from the Rural Fire Brigade Association of Queensland. Thank you very much, kind sir.
Thank you. Have a good evening, guys.
Good evening.
Thanks, Dave.
And so, yep, Dave is gone, and I am at Hughes Enterprise. Hughes Enterprise is the headquarters of Elite Dangerous Australia Cunty League, EDAKL, in the system of Cunty. Yes, it is spelt Kunti. Now, if I was to go to the Galaxy map and show you a description of EDA Cunty League, Cunty is a rough neighbourhood. EDA Cunty League was founded when some rough cunties got together with some reckless cunties to spread their message. Oi, cunty, it's time to harden up. That was set up quite a few years back by Commander Kitty Bomb, who set up the faction in-game as an early backer. They were given an option to do that sort of stuff, which is really cool. And one of the few of the early ones that have still remained, EDA Cunty League now comprises 21 systems in the local area. And as we were talking to Dave, I was doing what we call my EDA Cunty bubble run, where I fly around all of our systems, forcing the update using Elite Dangerous Market Connector. Basically, so I can issue orders to my faction via our Discord server and basically advance the cause. We control expansions. We control our influence to not have any unintended expansions and piss our neighbours off by moving into their systems. So it's actually a constant job. I do this every time I start Elite Dangerous. I go out and do this cunty bubble run.
Like the teabaggers up near us in Tiaka, I find it amazing that Frontier let you keep the name rather than just looking at the system name and changing it.
We well, as I think Kitty was a very early backer and alpha backer, so they must hold them to a higher standard than the rest of us plebs. But typically Australian that we are, our system of government in this game is a prison colony. We can't get any better than that, can we?
Nope. Very, very traditional.
All right, so I need to land and dock this ship. Where am I here? And while we're here, we'll say good morning to you, Mad Cat. How are you today?
Yeah, all good. I just have woke up and saw that the fire brigade guy was on, so I thought I'd listen in and actually, hear what one of them had to say in person, which was very interesting to hear the work they do. And I said, in the UK, our only volunteer emergency service is the lifeboats, which is a different kettle of fish, literally.
Yes, that's true.
I think it takes amazing courage just looking at some of the videos of the fires, and just imagining staring at that in the face and trying to put it out.
Well, it's one of the sort of the developments. I mean, we Australian firefighters, we in terms of bushfire, we don't go in and attack the fire directly. We don't try and stop it in its tracks. We, as David said, they let the fire burn to a point where they can control it. Now that's with, so if fire starts, you will then burn in front of the fire in a controlled manner. So when the fire comes to what you've already burned, it can't go any further. There's no point wasting a lot of water when Australia's in a drought to try and actively put out a fire. We let it burn, and that it's also an environmental factor with that as well. Because Australia has been a very dry continent for such a long time, its flora has basically learned to utilise fire to propagate its seed. There are some bush plants out there that their seed pods will only open when they hit a certain temperature, and that temperature can only be get at by actually a fire coming through. So at some point the plant expects a fire to come through, and that's when it propagates its seed.
Yeah. Is that so in the years of droughts the pods just sit there unactivated rather than trying to grow in a drought year?
Exactly. Take that, you evolutionary theorists. But then we have, as the video I showed before, we call them firestorms. Especially the Black Saturday one was especially devastating. As I mentioned before, 173 people lost their lives. Boo the hamster, who's in the Discord chat, and myself were very much a part of that, not on the active fire front. We were in the background working. Myself, I was working with amateur radio teams, basically keeping the communications up and running. Mobile phone towers had been destroyed. The repeaters for the emergency services had been destroyed in these fires in a very mountainous area where you would like to have repeaters in a lot of different places. So what had happened is that the amateur radio teams would go in, set up their equipment, and basically let the emergency services use their equipment to keep communications alive. That organisation is called WICEN, the Wireless Institute Civil Emergency Network, being activated by the Victorian government at the time. Now, Boo had a certain experience as well that we were talking about before. Boo, you can explain to them what you got up to.
Yeah, I remember that day so well. I was living in Melbourne at the time, back up here in Queensland now, but living in Melbourne at the time, and you just couldn't walk outside. You know, someone's going to have to do the conversion to Fahrenheit. 20 degrees.
40,
but it was
47 degrees, yeah.
It 47C.
Yep.
Yeah, 47C. Yeah, you just couldn't walk outside and dry. And I can't remember what the northerlies were. The winds were just, but you know, you're talking 100-kilometre plus winds.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm docking illegally.
Done the conversion. 47 Celsius was 116.6 Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Fortunately, in the UK, like you, we use a civilized temperature scale.
yeah, but it certainly wasn't civilized. It was hot. It was hot,
especially hot. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, you could see because Kinglake is not that far out of Melbourne, and that's, you know, where some of the most devastating fires happen, were around Kinglake, and you could just see the haze in the sky and the redness in the sky. It wasn't really a proper sunset.
The sky to the north was red. This massive red glow. I remember it as vividly as well. I was actually not too far from where the Kinglake fire started. I was at a friend's place and we were working on my car at the time, and we walk outside and I was going to have a smoke, and I saw the big plume of smoke pop up. And as I saw the plume of smoke, the phone in his house rang, and his missus grabbed it saying, "Oh, there's a fire, we need to get ourselves ready." Oddly enough, with those northerly winds, it was, if the northerly winds had hung around, it was actually sort of controllable because it was in a predictable direction.
That's right. There was a wind change, wasn't there? There was a front come through and it just caused havoc.
I know the area quite well because I live not too far from where it all started and got bad. So the fire front was coming in a southerly direction from the little town of Kilmore, and basically run its course, and then the wind change come through. When you're going from a northwesterly wind to a southwesterly wind, and the fire's running in one direction, and you turn the wind on itself 90 degrees, you basically have a fire front that is as long as it burnt, as wide as it burnt long. A massive wall of flame that would have been at least 30 to 40 kilometres in length, intense heat, and as the video before said, eucalyptus oil does evaporate at about 47 degrees, and I can tell you it was getting close to 50 degrees outside when it was coming through, and as the fire was consuming itself, the heat radiating forward, more eucalyptus oil was coming out of the trees, basically fanning the flames, so to speak.
Yeah, the whole idea of trees that basically self-ignite. It's like, you know.
It's not just.
What else do you expect from Australia? To be honest,
it's not just the cute animals that kill you; it's the trees as well.
Even the trees will kill you, Ben.
And yes, g'day, Ben. How are you, buddy? Long time no speak.
Hey guys. Yeah, no, I had some real life taken off a few minutes ago, so wasn't able to jump in till now. I've been listening in as I can.
Yep.
It looks like we're off at good old Cunty, so I'm flying over there myself.
Okay. I'm just figuring out what my faction needs to do, because I just done my little BGS walkabout. Just checking Anara on the numbers, and we're in a couple of elections in the system. I might do some election missions.
I have all the alcohol and tea and coffee that I was collecting from yesterday.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you'll find that as a prison colony, alcohol and narcotics and stuff are not allowed in the government. Of all the things,
not even for the guards.
The guards?
The members of staff?
No.
No?
If you fly into the system, your cargo would be illicit.
I'm sure you can sneak some into Hughes Enterprise.
Just stuff them up your exhaust. Just stuff them up your exhaust pipes.
Something like that.
Nothing to see here. See here. Move along.
Yes. Silent running, please. So I'm just looking at. We're in elections in a system. I just can't remember which one it was. Where am I here? We are in elections in a system called San Davokji. So I'm going to be jumping in my Python and doing some missions in that system. It's owned by another player faction, but they very much have said, keep your influence low and we won't care.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So
I'll come give you a hand.
So I didn't. Do they? I've seen videos of birds that basically pick up burning sticks and move the fire. Is that a problem that they've had to face? You're the
No, not in Australia. No. We've actually the biggest danger is wind. Wind obviously fuels, brings oxygen to the fire, and the wind is the worst factor. There, I remember. It never really was confirmed for me. I was never able to find an accurate news report on it. But about a week and a half after the start of the Black Saturday fires, a little ball of smouldering timber and dirt was found in New Zealand. And this report, I really cannot confirm this, but this report, they analysed the soil, they analysed the timber, and apparently it came from Victoria. The winds were that strong, it picked up this ball of dirt and timber and left it burning in the sky all the way out to New Zealand. I doubt it, but crikey.
It does sound implausible because I know Australia and New Zealand are much further apart than they look on the map. Everybody thinks they're quite close, but they're not really.
No. One little known fact is that when Australia was becoming a Commonwealth of colonies, they invited New Zealand to join the Commonwealth, and they said no.
But it is a significant problem. I mean, the biggest problem with all the fires that we see is the fact that the cinders and the ash can travel such incredible distances, and that's what causes the fire spreads, and that's what causes all the big problems with other houses that have done the right thing. They've done the clearings, but just the ash and cinders can just travel such incredible distances and then set fires off kilometres away.
And then if everybody's at the main fire, it takes longer to get somebody to the new one, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, you're just dealing with it on multiple.
Yeah, when it comes to a firestorm, the main concern, especially for the volunteer fire brigades, is to protect lives and property. So they will protect property as much as they can, but their main concern will be to save lives. Now, houses can be rebuilt, gardens can be resown, forests will grow, but losing a life is very devastating, and we obviously it's sad to hear people do die in fires, but it is an unfortunate thing. It's not so much the flames that will kill you; it's the radiant heat.
Do you have problems with stampeding farm animals in fire? Like cattle going off on a stampede or away from the fire?
Not really. What farmers would do, if they do happen to have a fire on their property, they will just cut the fence and let them go. And they let the cows,
try and get them back later.
Get them back later. If they die, they do die. Just save your property and your life as much as you possibly could, and go from there. Now, I do apologise. I have not been watching the Twitch stream because I don't want to fly into this bloody star.
No.
that would be unfortunate.
Ironic.
Yes, that's true. Die of a big ball of fire. Winds were enough. Lejeune Coffee, yes, flames do hurt, but it is the radiant heat that will probably kill you before the flames lick your skin. Especially in that little video that we showed before, where the radiant heat from 300 metres away was enough to hurt you. Anyway, Fairless City, here we go.
I mean, I know in building fires, it's the smoke that'll get you long before the actual flames do.
That's exactly right. Yes. But you know, it makes Australians incredibly proud to you know, Bill and I, you know, and everyone in Australia who has either lived through it or seen it or, you know, watched it on the telly. We're all very incredibly proud of our volunteer fire brigades around the country. They are providing an invaluable service to the community. And as you said in the video before, and as Dave said, it could be just a couple of landholders who have a couple of slip-ons that they, you know, drive their ute under and drop the slip-on on. It's all ready to go. Crank over the engine and basically go and try and fight the fire as best they can. Safety is a major factor, and as he said, you know, any responding unit has to report in and give regular situation reports as to where they are and what they're doing to ensure the safety of the volunteers at all times. However, there are some situations. It did happen on the Black Saturday bushfires, and recently, a few years ago, with fires in the Gippsland region of Victoria, that trucks were flashed over, where the fire has caught up with them and has burnt over the truck. And thankfully, in years gone by, there's lessons have been learnt, and better protection for the crews in the trucks has been made. So we're very, very pleased that governments and associations learning from mistakes, yes, but making the job of firefighting in Australia much safer, as safe as it can, especially dealing with fire. Yes, Icarus, we do live all the way around here, but you Brits sent us over. And it also comes into a whole another issue of land management. You know, a question was asked before, a big thing between greenies and landholders. You know, there's vast tracts of public land owned by the state government. They are responsible for controlling and, you know, maintaining it as best they could. Unfortunately, there are certain factions within a society that don't want to see land burnt. Unfortunately, it's just a way of life. Our Aboriginal traditional owners of the land used fire to hunt, and they also used it to control the burnable fuel load as well. They didn't have Rural Fire Brigades. They had to run as fast as they could, so they purposely burnt the areas to, you know, grow flowers and move game along so they could have a feed. And we've been learning a lot off our traditional owners of, you know, managing the land through their methods. Cool burns, where you light a fire in a very cool fashion, let it move slowly. And it's much, you know, not during the heat and wind of summer, it's during the cool of autumn and spring to control areas so they won't get as bad of a fire if it ever came through.
Yeah, that just goes back to what you were saying before, Zorba, just in terms of controlling the underbrush and controlling the growth, because, you know, that's what really helps the fire along. You know, once they're started, that underbrush is not sort of maintained and kept under control, the fires just move that much more quickly.
Exactly. Boo would know the area of Mount Disappointment in the state forest that is to the west of King Lake.
Yep.
From memory, it was the fuel load before the fire was, I think, about 12.5 tonne per acre or something. It was an amazing heavy fuel load, and no burns had gone through purely through bureaucracy for a long number of years, and that was one of the contributing factors that helped with the Black Saturday fires in 2009.
Yeah, that legislation got changed pretty rapidly after the fires. There was a lot of attention on it.
It certainly did, yes, it did.
Yeah. Yeah, the long-term consequences are just devastating. I worked with a friend whose house was destroyed in the King Lake fires, and it just went on for years. It affected him and his family for years. So they eventually decided not to rebuild, because the cost of rebuilding, because of the new requirements to build in those areas, just made it incredibly prohibitive, which meant, you know, those communities just had people ripped out of them, and not just because of people being killed in the fires, but people just deciding that they just couldn't go back there after it. So he ended up by moving, had to find work. And it's really disruptive on families and community.
So does the government? So it sounds like the government doesn't help much with, helping people rebuild. And what about? I mean, does insurance cover the fires, or does it come under that category act of God? The get out clause.
I was working for government at the time, and government would do what they could to help people in their immediate need, like they'd offer grants for people just to get by in the days immediately after the fire. But above and beyond that, it really did come down to insurance. And Zorba, you probably know a lot more about that than I do in terms of...
there was a massive charity fund was set up. I think close to $900 million was raised for victims of the Black Saturday fires. And Black Saturday fires was it ended up Black Saturday was the worst day of it all. But there was a few fires that were burning beforehand that if it actually linked up with the fires to the southeastern Melbourne and the fires of the northeastern Melbourne, it would have been a fire front of about 180 kilometres. It would have been something massive, but thankfully it never actually joined up, and we did end up getting things. So the state government actually called in the army to help with the recovery of the Black Saturday bushfires. A very rare thing to call in the army, but they did come in and help. The federal government came in with assistance grants as well, from memory. I think Kevin Rudd was the Prime Minister at the time. And
I think sounds about right.
Kevin 07 would have been 09.
Yep.
Not to say the governments didn't immediately jump in and try and help people. They had to make sure it was safe to go back in and let insurance assistance come in. And yes, people were insured, but there were some people who weren't. And the state government of Victoria and also the federal government did make sure that those who didn't have adequate insurance were able to get the help that they could. I do remember that. Not to say that they were going to build them new houses or anything, but they definitely made sure that any financial impact was lessened to be. And this is coming from memory of 10 years ago, so a lot's happened. Yeah, a lot's happened since then. All right, but looking at the mission board here, where is EDA? Superintendent Lamar Torres. I'm not set up for killing at the moment, so I'll just have to do some poll data missions, which is fine. There's lots of them. If I press the right buttons and accept them all. That one. No, we're in early days. Anything we do in this election is going to be beneficial.
I was a bit annoyed when I started my stream to see that the Sargoids had stopped setting stations on fire, because I thought, just do a thematic fire rescue stream whilst talking about real fire service. But no, the Sargoids did not cooperate.
FDev could have done something about that, I'm sure.
They could have, yeah.
Just set something on fire just for us.
No, all power to them for getting behind this too. Yeah.
Yes, we must give FDev a massive thank you for showing a bit of support, broadcasting it out to the wider community. So far, just looking at the Twitch stream, 7,000 viewers over the course of the last 24, 36 hours, which is really, really good. I'm very pleased with that. And as we said before, we are raising money for the Rural Fire Brigade Association of Queensland. Is an organisation supporting the volunteers that go out and fight bushfires, and are very much a well-deserving organisation in the community. And at about $2,000 goal, we have raised $2,150. So thank you to people donating from that. Rumble Spooks, Bruce Kazika, keep going down. Pete Longman, Loot, Durka. DH397, someone who isn't Rainbow Tamer, Commander Voltamp, and just quickly Rainbow Tamer again. Rainbow Tamer, very generous with a $110 donation. Thank you very much, sir. Commander Vanguard Mark 1, Fossbod EIC, It's Litany, keep going down. Oh, Rainbow Tamer is being very generous with a $170 donation. You are total. You're too kind, my friend. Umbra Luna, Kazor, and a few anonymous donators there as well. And Commander Goat Boy, well done, sir. Here's one of my
thanks, Goat Boy.
One of my boys with a $50 donation. I must do one myself. Commander Gear Spider, thank you. I know who he is. Filthy Casual Play, Nepuna Deerings. My apologies. And Boo, you yourself have donated $100. Thank you very much, sir.
Could not.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So let us find out where my little missions have picked up. So we have only been in the fight for 1 day. So not much to do at the moment, but anything helps, especially when it comes to missions, election missions. Keeps things moving along. So where am I here? Go to Zeta Pictoris and Rub. Fantastic. I like Zeta Pictoris. It's a nice little system. And only one jump away. And coming up after me, I can't remember who was after me. Just have to find
I've got that, Boo. I've got it right in front of me.
Find the list.
Brenna Soria, the guys from Adamant Toads are back again.
Fantastic.
Earlier today. So, yeah, back on... they've only 12 hours ago they were on. So, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Absolutely fantastic. And we've got another hour or so before they jump on. You haven't got rid of me yet, guys. But while I'm flying over, let's go put another video on. This one is another production by the Rural Fire Service of Queensland. Very good video, and we shall play that video, if I can cue it up, please, right now.
The worst of the fires was west of Udlow on the Sunshine Coast hinterland.
That was the biggest fire we have ever seen in Queensland to that date.
There was people burnt and injured in those fires.
Just a massive mushroom in the sky.
The government decided it was time to step in.
The fire had gone over the top of our head with such an intensity, we just couldn't imagine where it had stopped. So our basic setup was fairly primitive in 1994. We had VHF radios that were ineffective in a really hot fire and heavy smoke.
The budget of the organisation was smaller than my original budget is today.
Not many people had mobile telephones. We had very, very little equipment.
The national park out towards the mountains was just bone dry. It was just terrible bloody conditions. There was no dew even. And on the Sunday afternoon it all started up.
I'd gone over to attend to a paddock fire that was spreading, and I saw this enormous mushroom of smoke, just a massive mushroom in the sky. I looked at that and said to the guy I was with, well, I'm pleased I'm here and not there.
The first officer was Alan Smurden in those days. He did a quick ring around. It was ringing mainly all the farmers and that around the place. Anybody that had a tractor and a water tank and a bit of gear that could get out there and help fight the fire. We didn't even know what we were heading into. We went out there, lined up on the road. We were just standing there waiting for it to see what was going to happen. All of a sudden there was just this hell of a roar, and then it just started lighting up all around us. Embers just started dropping everywhere.
And the fire just got away from Cove Road where it started. It went straight into this hardwood reserve and just went berserk. Sunday afternoon it burnt through there fairly quickly. It ran up and over the top of Mount Beerwah. It ran down to Crookneck or Mount Canaran over here at Glasshouse. Burnt over the top of that on the Sunday night and jumped around the place at Glasshouse. By midnight Sunday night, everybody thought it was over, but that was a misconception.
The Bureau recorded wind gusts of up to 93 kilometres an hour.
Declaration of a state of fire emergency will effectively ban all fires in open areas.
Residents collapsed, needing emergency care.
With what we had available to us, we knew that the Monday was going to be fairly volatile. It was like Ash Wednesday humidity, down around 2 or 3% or something.
Father and I went to go and have a look, and the fire had spotted over, I'd say early in the morning, and had got going again. And it was in the bush well and going well.
We were out here about 8 o'clock in the morning, just to the west of where we're standing on top of a hill. and you could just feel the build-up in the air. And while we were standing there, a massive fireball came out of the hardwood timber and sailed across the top of us, hit the ground a couple of 100 metres away and just lit everything up like a petrol fire. Blasted back to the mountains, burnt the mountains all over again, burnt every stand of hardwood it could find up on top of the hill.
It's bloody frightening because it gets to a point where the smoke's that bad you can't see in front of your face, so you're just tackling what you can see in front of you. You don't know what's happening. The wind's blowing, so it clears for a bit and you have a quick look around, and then the smoke gets around you again.
Late in the afternoon, it came down a stand of hardwood in a gully. We did our absolute best to put a backburn in down there to try and stop the spread towards our town. We were down there busy doing that, and it just picked up like a freight train. And in the finish, we packed up to get out of there, and we left it a little bit too late. At that moment, I had my poor old dad up on top of a hill out the back of Peachester spotting the fire for us. He had a mobile phone. He was talking to me, and I was running for my Land Cruiser ute. He was telling me that it had just broken loose and jumped out of this piece of hardwood country, and I said, yes, I know, I'm underneath it. And when I got to my ute, I stopped for a second, and on the opposite side of my ute was a quad bike that belonged to a farm in the area here, and the quad bike spontaneously ignited. There was no flame near it, but it just spontaneously ignited. I touched the ute and it was red hot. The rubbers were all sticky in the windows, and I thought, it won't start, you need oxygen for a combustion engine. So I thought, that's it, it's all over. And I thought, well, I might as well be inside as outside. So I dived inside, hit the key, and it started. And the dozer had started, and the little Daihatsu we had with us, it started. And so we thought, well, we'll give it our best shot. So we followed the dozer through the flames, and found a bit of a rise, and we ran the dozer blade around and cleared the rise off a little bit, so there was no vegetation there, and we sat huddled in front of the dozer blade for the next 2 or 3 hours. The flames were probably 100 foot high, and they were whipping and flapping at the ground like a piece of elastic. And where they'd hit the ground, they would blow away whatever was there. Just blow it out of the ground and gone. And we were starting to feel the effect of no oxygen. It was like night in underneath this flame. But I can say that I stood at the side of my door and thought, we're done, it's over, and all of this for naught. What happened, happened. What happened, happened.
So there we go. The 94 Queensland fires at Birrabara, and it's one of this. You saw some of the pictures of back then. These were guys in Land Cruisers. Oh, hang on, we're going to have a bit of an echo here, aren't we? Sorry, my bad. Guys in Land Cruisers, basically stock standard Toyota Land Cruisers of the time, going out with a slip-on, not knowing what they were going into. We didn't have GPSs back in 94. Mobile phones were still 1G or 2G. Very basic things. The great unknown, and the safety was considered, but that's what the guys did. The guys did what they had to do. Unfortunately, people do lose their lives, and people do get injured. But we're ever thankful of our volunteer fire brigades, and the link is in the Twitch chat. My cause. We are raising money for the Queensland Rural Fire Brigade Donation Fund. So far we have exceeded our target by $150, and if my card number was right, there'll be a bit more in there too. I've got to get my wallet out later. So we're in the system of Zeta Pictoris. I am heading off to Hickman Orbital to do some election missions for Elite Dangerous Australia Country League. We're a pretty big faction, 21 systems about 80, 90 light years below Shinrona Desra. Not too far from Seoul. We have well over 1,200 people in our Facebook group, Elite Dangerous Australia and New Zealand. You're welcome to pop up and say g'day. And a few hundred people in our Discord service. We're quite an active faction. I do the first, myself. I'm Commander Zorba Dundee, but my name's Ethan. I run the faction. I do most of the BGS orders, so I fly around and make sure everything's updated. So I have the latest information to issue orders to the faction. And tonight I am doing some election missions out of San Dabokchi. A system we don't own. It's owned by another player faction, but we try and maintain a low level of influence in the 3 systems that we have unfortunately expanded into accidentally. Oh, dearie me. Make sure. Just send a message in a Discord and copy that so I can send it to some people. There we go.
Oh, we've just had another 25 bucks come through from our own Jeff Zorba.
Commander Jeff. Thank you very much. Jeff is Jeffrey. He lives out in New Zealand. Lovely guy, and he is he does a buttload of work with a number of different factions, but he likes to call Cunty home. And there we go. Now, I know that there are a lot of international people, some Australians watching at the time. If you've got a question of an Australian, if you wanted to know what Australia was really like, from our perspective, come and ask the question. There is nothing we can't answer.
We'll just make shit up.
The drop bears are totally real. They really are. And hoop snakes and min lights. If you don't know what they are, you've never heard of min lights.
Min lights are real.
They are very much real.
Here's the question: what's the unladen airspeed of a sparrow?
Boo, would you like to answer or shall I?
Swallow, sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Swallow, sparrow, small bird, who cares?
Laden or unladen, yes.
I don't know that.
No, you got it wrong. It was an African or European swallow.
African or European swallow.
Yeah, I've already specified whether it was an unladen swallow.
Oh, dearie me. Oh, crikey. We're having some fun. African or European. Thank you, Umbra Luna, in the chat. Commander Brenner, did you want to pop in and say g'day?
Good day. I'm just lurking in the background, making sure everything's all toasty and ready on my end.
I can't remember what time I was finishing up tonight. It would have been... You started...
4 minutes ago.
Yeah, 4 minutes ago.
It's no worries.
Oh, dearie me. I thought it was, finishing. You started at 11. But anyway, welcome to Commander Brenner Soria, taking up the last of the last hour of the stream. We'll palm it off very shortly. Let me just land this ship at Hickman Orbital in Zeta Pictoris as I continue some work for EDA Cunty League. I'll be talking to Brenner a little bit further as he goes along to finish up the last one, and then I'll head off and he can finish everything up. So as soon as I land, I will stop my stream and Brenner can get himself ready. Are you ready, sir?
Yeah, I'm ready whenever you are, boss.
No problems. I am not too far off landing.
I think we can all see that on the stream.
Yep. Thankfully, Australian internet, I'm at least 2 to 3 seconds in front of the Twitch stream, which is not too bad, to be honest.
All things considered, yeah.
That's it.
I have more than enough Twitch friends or Australian friends to know.
Now, what I might do is that I'm going to finish off with the standard emergency warning signal. You may have heard it at the start of my stream. Now, every radio station in Australia, a little fact, every radio station in Australia has this encoded into the station software. It is an automatic thing that when required, stations must broadcast this emergency warning signal. You must stop and listen to this because it is obviously an incident of significance to the local area or to the greater region, and it's important people understand. So to finish off my stream, I'm going to let you listen to this very annoying sound, but it is something that Australia has encoded into every commercial and public radio station. So thank you all very much, and very shortly we'll have Commander Brenna Soria. Thank you all very much, and very